In recent events in the news, you may have heard of the appalling crimes like that of the Newtown, Connecticut school shooting, the Virginia Tech shooting, and the Aurora movie theater shooting. These crimes were horrible events and truly a display of some of the worst humanity has to offer. In the pain of the aftermath, people ask why. In these cases, the sites often turn to violent video games. Video games are often blamed for the behavior of people who commit mass shootings. This belief is simply unfounded. Actually, the two major causes of violence are stress and inherent aggression in the person. To say that video games cause shootings to occur is to imply that the content drives the response, rather than the person driving the response. By this I mean, saying that video games cause violence is leaving out the most important part of the equation, the person. It is the person who is in control of their actions, not the content. Vast majorities of today's youth play violent video games, and if the games were the definitive cause of mass shootings or violent crimes in general, we should be seeing many more of these crimes. In actuality, violent crime rates among youth have declined significantly over the past 30 years, the same 30 years in which gaming has become so popular. Similarly, in the United States, gun-related crime is much higher per capita than anywhere else in the world, and yet there are many other countries that have more violent video games and spend more on violent video games than the US does. Another thing to consider is that school shootings are nothing new to the US. They didn't start after the creation of video games. In response to the Columbine shooting, the US Secret Service has researched the last 41 students involved in school shootings and found that only 5 had played violent video games. Additionally, of the 41, only 24 demonstrated interest in violent media of any kind, including books, TV, and movies. That means 40% of the school shootings were committed by a student or students who had never used violent media of any kind. These days, given the vast majority of people who play video games, it would be more abnormal if any randomly selected person had never played a violent video game. This shows that violent media isn't necessarily a good predictor of shootings. What we're seeing could be described as moral panic, a phenomenon where some aspect of life becomes widely feared for a time, the response is disproportionate to the threat, then the issue is forgotten. In the 1980s, the pen and paper role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons was accused of causing witchcraft, murder, suicide, and Satanism. Such outrageous claims would not be popularly made today. Consider the cost of both money and life due to sporting events. Not only do such events encourage actual physical violence, particularly mixed martial arts and boxing, but they also cause massive outbreaks amongst their viewers. How many riots have occurred worldwide due to hockey games or soccer games? Too many. Now consider video games. The important distinction here, besides the fact that there have been no riots caused by games, is that when a player plays a game, there is a distinction between the virtual world and the real world. When you put two people in the octagon used by mixed martial arts, people are begging for real blood, real violence, and real physical aggression. When you put two people in the game world, they fight, they compete, and they kill. But it's all fake. Let us also consider movies and TV in general. Both contain great deals of violence. Rather than blame video games, perhaps we should examine ourselves. We are clearly a culture that enjoys our violent entertainment, whatever form it comes in. If we're so worried about our youth becoming violent killers, then maybe there should be some way to limit access underagers have to violent video games. But there is. The Entertainment Software Ratings Board, or ESRB, was created for exactly this purpose. Almost every single game ever created after the inception of the ESRB has been rated based on its content. Every game with anything more than cartoon violence will most likely get a rating of mature. That means kids under 17 cannot get this game without an adult buying it for them. It is the responsibility of the parents to look after their own kids. It is not the responsibility of the government to limit everyone's access to something that only an extremely small percentage can't handle. That would be a breach of First Amendment rights as determined by the Supreme Court.